Yesterday, we witnessed one of the most stunning and cartoonish implosions of a public figure during congressional testimony that I can remember. And I have seen a lot of examples of this. I'm talking about Donald Trump's propagandizing Attorney General William Barr, who testified before Congress, before a Senate committee, and imploded in a way that is really a data point in recent political history, extraordinarily notable. Now, the entire thing went on for hours, and I'm not going to play hours of testimony for you. And there are actually lots of clips I could show you. Senator Mazie Hirono did very, very well. Some other senators did very well. But just for today, just to take sort of a tour of one moment of this testimony, I'm going to focus in on Senator Kamala Harris's questioning of Barr, which exposed some major problems in the building evidence against Barr as not a law enforcement official, but just as a partisan actor in this entire Mueller report fiasco, who should immediately be impeached for his role in the management of the Mueller investigation and the release of the report. Barr refused to even answer clearly. Like, it started and it was already bad. Kamala Harris just asking a yes or no question, and Barr refusing to answer whether Trump or people around Trump have directed Barr to investigate specific people, which we're going to get into in a bit. William Barr admitted that he made the decision not to charge President Trump with obstruction without having looked at the evidence of the investigation, which in and of itself, there's some justification for, and I'll talk about that. But it opened the door to Barr suggesting that maybe part of the decision not to charge Trump was made by Rod Rosenstein, which is extremely problematic since Rosenstein was a witness in that investigation. Stunning conflict of interest that Barr admitted to. A witness in an investigation shouldn't get to decide whether that investigation leads to charges. It's a total miscarriage of justice. And I hate to have to do this last disclaimer here, but I have to because of the political environment in which we are finding ourselves. I'm telling you that Kamala Harris crushed Barr in this hearing because she did. I'm not endorsing her for president. This is not an attack on Bernie, who I like. Just skip it, okay? If you're going to write to me and your reaction to this will be, I'm now a shill for Kamala Harris, she crushed Barr, and that's what we're talking about here. So check out Barr squirming, mealy-mouthed, unable to even deny that the White House is telling him who to investigate. And notice that if you're watching, Cory Booker is sitting to Kamala Harris's right. The smirk on his face is the smirk of, I am watching something really, really good happen right here. Here's Barr starting to implode on national television.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Barr, has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone?
I wouldn't.
Yes or no?
Could you repeat that question?
I will repeat it. Yeah. Has the president or anyone at the White House ever asked or suggested that you open an investigation of anyone? Yes or no, please, sir?
The president or anybody else?
Seems you would remember something like that and be able to tell us.
Yeah, but I'm trying to grapple with the word suggest. I mean, there have been discussions of matters out there that they have not asked me to open an investigation, but
perhaps they've suggested?
I don't know. I wouldn't say suggest.
Hinted?
I don't know.
Inferred? You don't know. Okay.
The answer that he doesn't know is stunning. And I don't really get why Kamala Harris moves on at this point. I would have continued on that, but I also get that she had other things to get to in limited time. But stunning and relevant because there are suspicions that Trump is pushing the Justice Department to open investigations into people involved with the Mueller probe, into Hillary Clinton associates, who knows? And Barr doesn't deny it here. Already extraordinary, and the look on Cory Booker's face, that smirk really says it all. So let's continue, and this is really key. Kamala Harris gets to a really important point. Barr and Rosenstein put out a statement saying that the evidence led them to decide not to charge Donald Trump with obstruction. But Kamala Harris wants to know, did you actually look at the evidence? And the answer is, of course, no.
March 24th summary, you wrote that, quote, after reviewing the special counsel's final report, Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein and I have concluded that the evidence is not sufficient to establish that the president committed an obstruction of justice offense. Now, the special counsel's investigation produced a great deal of evidence. I'm led to believe it included witnesses' notes and emails, witnesses' congressional testimony, witnesses' interviews, which were summarized in the FBI 302 forms, former FBI Director Comey's memos, and the President's public statements. My question is, in reaching your conclusion, did you personally review all of the underlying evidence?
No, we took and
We
accepted
did
the
Mr. Rosenstein?
No, we accepted the statements in the report as the factual record. We did not go underneath it to see whether or not they were accurate. We accepted it as accurate and made our.
So you accepted the report as the evidence?
Yes.
You did not question or look at the underlying evidence that supports the conclusions in the report?
No.
So let's talk about this. Think back for a second to when the Barr letter was released. The report was sent to Barr, and within 48 hours, Barr was able to say, we're not indicting Trump on obstruction. And at the time we said, how did he decide so quickly? And Trumpists wrote to me and said, well, David, obviously William Barr got the report way in advance and had time to look at all the underlying evidence in that report. And here is William Barr himself saying, actually, no, he didn't look at the evidence before deciding not to prosecute. He did it based on the Mueller report, which actually says there is substantial evidence of obstruction. So I want to be really careful here, okay? Because some law enforcement officials reached out to me, because I talked about this on my live stream last night, and said, David, hold on a second. It's not crazy for Barr not to look at the underlying evidence. Imagine, as Rob, for example, wrote to me, imagine a murder investigation where somebody got shot. The report says the shooter's fingerprints were on the gun. The Attorney General wouldn't necessarily go to evidence and look at the fingerprints themselves. They would just assume, because this is how things work, that the report claiming the fingerprints were found is good enough. And that's a perfectly reasonable point, but there's a couple caveats here that you have to think about. Number one, the report said there is substantial evidence of obstruction. So when William Barr says, I didn't actually look at the evidence to make that decision, well, the report said there was substantial evidence. So when you don't go and look at the evidence for yourself and you make a decision that seems to run directly counter to what was contained in the report, that starts to be problematic. But then there's another kind of issue here, which is the whole point is Mueller didn't say that he recommends or can exonerate Trump from charges on obstruction. Normally, when an AG or a state's attorney, prosecutor, whatever, get a report, the report says, on the basis of the evidence, here's our recommendation as to what you should do, indict or not indict. This was left up to Barr. So the standard is different with regard to Barr's responsibility to look at, to actually look at the evidence. Now, this is all just a lead up, because this gets us to Kamala Harris saying, isn't it a problem that you made a decision about charging the president or not charging the president without looking at the evidence? And Barr tries to play this game of, well, go ask Bob Mueller, because in the end, he's the prosecutor. I'm just the attorney general. At which point Kamala Harris says, well, you did make the decision, not Mueller, right? And Barr gets visibly confused, and it becomes unclear who actually made this decision. And it is Barr digging the hole deeper. He ties himself up into a pretzel. And then, big mistake, he mentions, well, actually, Rod Rosenstein was involved in this decision, which we'll get to in a second. Take a look.
As the Attorney General of the United States, you run the United States Department of Justice. If in any U.S. attorney's office around the country, the head of that office, when being asked to make a critical decision about, in this case, the person who holds the highest office in the land, and whether or not that person committed a crime, would you accept them recommending a charging decision to you if they had not reviewed the evidence?
Well, that's a question for Bob Mueller. He's the U.S. attorney. He's the one who presents the report.
But it was you who made the charging decision, sir. You made the decision not to charge the president.
No, in a Frost memo and in a declination memo.
You said it was your baby. What did you mean by that?
It was my baby to decide whether or not to disclose it to the public.
And whose decision was it? Who had the power to make the decision about whether or not the evidence was sufficient to make a determination of whether there had been an obstruction of justice?
Prosecution memos go up to the supervisor. In this case, it was the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General who decide on the final decision.
What does is mean? What is language? How does English work? I'm so confused. How did I get here? And there he said it. He talks about the Deputy Attorney General. So Barr opens the door to Rod Rosenstein, which Kamala Harris gets to. And this is the key moment, okay? And you're going to be confused about what William Barr says in this next clip because it doesn't make any sense. Did Rod Rosenstein decide on prosecuting or not prosecuting Trump on obstruction of justice? And if he did, Rosenstein was a witness in that probe. Why is a witness in the probe deciding about whether there will or will not be prosecutions? Was he cleared to be making those decisions? Asks Kamala Harris. And William Barr says, I don't know. I suppose he was cleared or maybe not. This is what a liar looks like.
Be the conflict of
Well,
interest.
I haven't been the only decision maker here. Now, let's take the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, who was approved by this Senate 94-6 with specific discussion on the floor that he would be responsible for supervising the Russian investigation.
I'm glad you brought up that.
Okay?
That's a
And
great
he has
topic.
30 years experience, and we had a number of senior prosecutors in the
Right.
department involved in this process, both career and non-career.
Yes, I've
who
read
all
the
agreed on
process,
the
sir.
disposition.
I have another question. And I'm glad you brought that subject up because I have a question about that. Earlier today, in response to Senator Graham, you said, quote, that you consulted with Rosenstein constantly, unquote, with respect to the special counsel's investigation and report. But Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein is also a key witness in the firing of FBI Director Comey. Did you consult
Well, that's
with I'm not finished.
Yeah.
Did you consult with DOJ ethics officials before you enlisted Rod Rosenstein to participate in a charging decision for an investigation, the subject of which he is also a witness?
My understanding was that he had been cleared already to participate in it by the.
So you had consulted with them and they cleared it?
No, I think they cleared it when he took over the investigation.
Did you
That's my
consult?
understanding.
You don't know whether he's been cleared of a
He-
conflict of interest?
He would be participating if there was a conflict of interest.
So you're saying that it did not need to be reviewed by the career ethics officials in your office
believe
to
it- I
determine
believe
if
it
was
was-
appropriate?
Well, I believe it was reviewed, and I
And what
would
was the
also point
finding?
out this seems to be a bit of a flip-flop, because when the president's
Sir,
supporters
the
were challenging
flip-flop, I think, in this
Rosenstein.
case is that you're not answering the question directly.
What?
Did the ethics officials in your office, in the Department of Justice, review the appropriateness of Rod Rosenstein being a part of making a charging decision on an investigation which he is also a witness in?
Yeah, so, as I said, my understanding was he had been cleared, and he had been cleared before I arrived.
Endlessly stunning. This is what a liar looks like. Barr's a hatchet man. He did what he was brought in to do. It's very clear now, and he has to be removed. Let me know what you think. I'm on Twitter at @DPakman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show. I want to hear from you about this.